Alright, I've got a really weird one for you today. So the story that I got to share with you today is not my own. This did not happen to me, but I heard this online the other day, and it was so intriguing that I knew I had to share it. You ever hear one of those stories where you're like, okay, what the hell is going on? This is really strange. I don't believe it. I want to say that, like right off the bat, I don't believe it, but it's interesting enough that it's worth sharing to me. And I've always wanted to do a series on the weird stuff that you see online, and I figured this is a good channel for it. Without any further ado, let's just get into it. Boris Kipriyanovich was born in 1996 in Russia. When Boris was just 2 weeks old, he was able to lift his head up by himself. Now, this doesn't seem so strange, but generally babies can't do this until they're about 1 to 3 months old. So the fact that he was doing this so young was a little strange. His mother was a doctor, and when she saw him doing this, she took note of it because it was so weird. Now, again, it wasn't too big of a deal, just something kind of interesting. But as time would go on, he would continue to amaze his parents. Just a few weeks after he was born, Boris was already able to speak. At about 18 months old, he was reading, writing, and painting. Due to his rapid growth in intellect, he was put in kindergarten when he was only 2 years old, and his teachers would be astounded at how intelligent he was. As Boris would get older, he would spend a lot of his time meditating. His parents would actually walk into his room and catch him in trances, and they would say that when they would walk in, it felt like he was communicating to something, or that there was someone sharing information with him. Boris seemed to pick up a fascination with space. He was talking about planets, stars, constellations, places out in the galaxy and in the universe, and he would go into the physics behind how the nature of space operated, which was weird because no one ever taught him this stuff. He just kinda knew it. After some time, his parents connected him with some specialists to see if maybe this information was either from his imagination or if any of it seemed to be legitimate. And every time they went to a specialist, the specialist was blown away. They labeled him a child prodigy. He was a savant, and there was a lot of expectation for this kid. But it wasn't until he was 7 years old that he shocked everyone in his family. Boris was on a camping trip with his family and some of their friends. Now, one of the friends happened to be a professor. So everyone's sitting around the campfire telling ghost stories and having a good time, when Boris walks up with a very serious demeanor. He was actually very mature in the way that he spoke for only being 7 years old, and he got everyone's attention. He said, "Hey guys, I need you all to quiet down real quick. There's something that I need to tell you." Now initially, nobody really did settle down. They didn't really give a lot of credence to this kid. They were like, "Come on, Boris, you're 7 years old. What do you really have to tell us?" But after some pressing, Boris eventually said, "Guys, seriously, I need to talk to you. This is important." So eventually everyone sits around, they humor him, and they're like, "All right, little Boris, what do you got to say?" And what he said shocked them. Boris started off by saying that he was originally from Mars, that he had grown up there, and after he died, he reincarnated on Earth to share his tale and give us some advice so that we don't make the same mistakes that his planet did. Now, the adults must have been shocked. They're sitting there like, "What the hell are you talking about, kid?" But they let him continue. He starts to tell them that the people of Mars live to about 35 years of age, and then they stop aging. Apparently, they have the ability to will themselves to just stop. And it's not like they can't die or anything. They can still die, but they just won't die of old age. He said the reason for this was because the people on his planet breathe carbon dioxide. And he went into the science behind why oxygen actually speeds up the life of organic metabolites. He said that these Martians were very tall and had a very advanced civilization. He said that they had spaceships and they even had the ability to open portals and traverse the universe by jumping through them. He said that the power sources that these spaceships used were ion and plasma based, but he also knew of other extra-dimensional beings out there that had their own spaceships with their own unique power sources. And he apparently was in communication with a bunch of different space races. He would go on to unintentionally mock Earth's fuel systems by saying that we don't really have the capabilities that they had, and our systems that we use, the kind of fuel that we use, it's not going to get us very far out up into space. Now, regarding these portals, they apparently weren't just a wormhole that would open up and then shoot you into a different part of space. Apparently, they also had the ability to send you wherever you wanted to go through time. He said during this time, they would use portals and these triangular spaceships to come to Earth, and this was millions of years ago. According to his memory, Earth had only one large continent at the time, called Lemuria, and he would come to Earth to visit the people who lived here, and generally he said that he would mostly use these triangular-shaped spaceships because they were better for not so far distance travel. Now, as for these portals that he would talk about, this was the part that I was most interested in, and he has a quote here talking about these, so I'm going to read that real quick. Portal is the same as teleport. It slows down time and opens a portal where time is speeding up fast. I can't say exactly, I don't remember. It opens on one side, and then in a few seconds or even a few minutes if the transfer's far away, it opens another area of space. Now, he started talking about his past life in an interview with the Camelot project, and this interview is online, so if you'd like to see it, I'll put that in the description. He said that when he was on Mars, he's around 14 years old, he started taking part in these air raids because there was a massive war going on between some of the Martians that were occupying this planet. He said that he was in an air raid against some of the Martians that had instigated the war, and he even remembers some of the friends that he fought side by side with in this war. He said that the spaceships that they used were so sophisticated and intricate, and they could travel anywhere in the universe. The reason this war started was over some of this technological advancement. It was whatever they were using to power the spaceships and these portals. The conflict over this technology apparently instigated a nuclear war, and that is what devastated Mars. Apparently, the nuclear fallout destroyed their atmosphere, and the Martians that were living on this planet were no longer allowed to live on the outside of it. They had to burrow into the crust where the carbon was more condensed. He said that even today, there are still Martians living under the crust of the planet. And that's kind of fascinating. Again, I want to make this clear. I don't believe any of this. It's fascinating that this kid either did recall all this or has such a vivid imagination that he just came to all of this under all of the research, the meditation, the studying that he had done on space. It's just kind of weird. Now, after Boris had explained all this, he said that the reason that he came to Earth was because he had a very important message to share with the people here. He said that as time went on, as Earthlings developed and changed and evolved, they became very authoritarian, they became very dangerous, and they started to crave war too. He said once we became so domineering and so technologically advanced that we also discovered nuclear war, it apparently scared the Martians that were on Mars at the time, and they started sending their people to reincarnate here to wake us up and let us know that that's a really bad direction to go down. Boris said that we don't have to go down that road and that there's a lot of hope for us. But what was weird was he wasn't talking about inner peace or spiritual enlightenment. He said that if we open the Sphinx, then that is what's going to give us the answers we're looking for. According to Boris, he used to travel to Earth during that period of time where the pyramids were being built, and he helped out with that in some way. So he knew a lot of intricacies about the pyramids and the Sphinx that a lot of people don't know. He said that behind the inner ear of the Sphinx is a mechanism that will open the Sphinx up, and on the inside of the Sphinx are our deepest secrets, our entire history, hidden knowledge that if we all knew would instantly shift the consciousness of the entire planet. Boris said that he's confident that the Sphinx does hold this information, but he's not sure how to get in there to find it. He also said that the pyramids of Giza hold secrets that would exceed our wildest expectations. He said that there were passages through the pyramids that we needed to discover, and for a long time, nobody really believed him on that. It wasn't until 2017 that we actually found some of these hidden rooms. Using cosmic ray imaging, scientists were able to find a giant 100-foot-long void right in the heart of the pyramid. Despite this discovery, though, nobody knows what this room was for, and still to this day, we don't know what in the world this void is doing there. But if you know the Egyptians, then you know that they never built anything without a purpose. So there's a reason this thing exists, we just don't know what it is. There are a bunch of different theories. Some of them are really wild, and I've heard this one for a few years, and I can't really get behind it because there's just no credible reason to believe it. But there are some people who think that there is a Martian spaceship down at the very bottom layer of the pyramid, or like maybe even a floor under the pyramid, and we can use it to traverse our universe. Again, like, it's one of the crazier ones. Maybe one day we find that down there, but even if we do, I doubt anyone would even tell us that it's down there. So, yeah, do with that what you will. Now, I have to admit, this story is really cool, but the only problem is we don't have any basis for all of it. That's really all it is just a really fascinating story by this 7-year-old kid. After Boris's interview was leaked online, he and his family were sent to a safe house where they're now under military guard. Officials say don't even look for him because it will be impossible for you to find him. And this is kind of annoying. This means that Boris can't offer any more information to people who are curious and want to know more about this whole situation. There are a lot of us out there who latched onto the story, I being one of them, but I'm so damn skeptical there's no way I can just believe it. I'd like to know if he's lying or not. Now, I know I've been a negative Nancy this whole time. I've been skeptical and trying to be grounded, not just believe all this, and that can be a little annoying, so I want to lend some credibility to this. And I have a list of some scientists who haven't spoken exactly on Boris's story, but what they have offered does lend some credibility to what he's saying. Dr. John Brandenburg is a plasma physicist. He believes that based on the coloration and composition of the soil on Mars, it indicates a series of mixed fission explosions that lends credibility to a nuclear fallout. Now, I do wonder if solar radiation could have a similar effect on the soil, but we're not really going to know that until we get enough samples, or until we get there. The next quote I have is from John Grunsfield. He's an astronaut who's been to space 5 times, and he's also the Associated Administrator Head of NASA's Science Mission Directive. He says, "The more we observe Mars, the more information we're getting that it really is a fascinating planet. From the Curiosity rover, we know now that Mars was once a planet very much like Earth, with long salty seas, freshwater lakes, probably snow-capped peaks, clouds, and a water cycle just like we're studying here on Earth. Something has happened to Mars. It lost its water." Alfred McEwen, a principal investigator working for HiRISE in the University of Arizona, said the possibility of life in the interior of Mars has always been very high. There's certainly water somewhere in the crust of Mars. It's very likely, I think, that there is life somewhere in the crust of Mars. Now, this obviously doesn't mean he's talking about Martians. This could easily be microbes, but again, we're not going to know until we get there. James Green, NASA's chief scientist, is quoted to have said, "Mars is the planet most like Earth, and in the past, Mars was a very different planet. It had an extensive atmosphere, and in fact had what we believe was a huge ocean, perhaps as large as 2/3 of the northern hemisphere. And that ocean may have been as much as a mile deep. So Mars indeed, 3 billion years ago, had extensive water resources. But something happened. Mars suffered a major climate change and lost its surface water." Now we'll move on to General Stubbebean, a retired United States Major General, also the commanding general of the U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command. He's one of America's most distinguished soldiers and chief of the U.S. Army Intelligence. He said, "There are structures on the surface of Mars. I will tell you for the record that there are structures underneath the surface of Mars that cannot be seen by the Voyager cameras that we sent in 1976. Our last quote is from Brian O'Leary, who was a former NASA astronaut and a Princeton physics professor. He said, "There's abundant evidence that we're being contacted, that civilizations have already been contacting us for a very long time." I'd also like to add that historically, we have a lot of ancient texts from civilizations across the world who speak of beings visiting our planet through use of portals. The Aztecs, the Egyptians, the Incas, the Mayans, there are apparently star portals across the world that these beings used to get here. And even the Greeks and Romans talk about angels and gods coming down from the stars and giving them fire, agriculture, mathematics, and science, helping them build their culture. And I'm not saying that this, as a matter of fact, literally happened. I'm just playing with the information in front of me. But it's very fascinating when you put all of it together like this. Now, I'm not a big alien guy. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. But when I heard this story, it fascinated me on multiple levels. Not only do you have this kid who believes that he was reincarnated, he believes he was reincarnated from a completely different planet. He claims that he came here so that we don't suffer through the same thing that his people suffered through. an all-out nuclear war. He goes into the mysteries of Egypt, which I've always been fascinated by. But the thing is, when it all is said and done, this is a great story. Maybe one day we will open up the Sphinx, and it'll shift the consciousness of every human being on this planet, like Boris said. Maybe the boy was a genius. Maybe he was reincarnated. Maybe he was a savant. Or maybe he had a lot of really awesome information swirling around his head, and he had such a vivid imagination that his mind knew how to do something with it. The unfortunate part is, as of right now, we can't really go much further with this. And that sucks. I always hate a story that has no payoff. As far as the science goes on Mars, it seems we're less interested in finding out if there's any life there or if there was life there before, and more interested on the planet itself. Why was Mars once so warm and wet, and now it's so cold and dry? My best guess? 5 to 10 years of marriage.